Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's froggiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Disclosure album, Caracal. Disclosure is an electronic music duo hailing from the UK who broke through a few years ago with their highly celebrated debut album, Settle. It was a record I enjoyed quite a bit. It featured a lot of very sharp house music productions on it, as well as some very well-received vocal guests, people like Sam Smith, as well as Aluna George. However, some of my favorite tracks on this record didn't feature any vocal guests. Tracks like F for You and When a Fire Starts to Burn. Yes, the music and the album did sound like the perfect soundtrack to some kind of hoity-toity, high-end retail clothing shop, and it most certainly was that. But I thought Disclosure had a kind of artful approach to house music and dance tunes with a kind of old school flair complemented with some modern production and just more contemporary music sensibilities. I had no reason not to go into this latest LP over here without assuming that we were going to get another set of very sleek, smooth, classy bangers. However, one thing I did notice going into this new Disclosure album is that it seemed like a lot of the vocal guests were centering more around what was topping the charts in the US, and that there were just some more high-profile names, people like The Weeknd and Miguel, and of course Lorde, and Sam Smith hops on this new Disclosure album as well. And there were some other singers and faces on this thing that were at least new to me that I was pretty excited to hear as well. And it's a pretty diverse array of guests on this thing, coming from the worlds of alternative R&B and pop music and soul and jazz even, which is nice because it keeps the LP from going stale, because a lot of the production on here, while I do like it, it is somewhat samey from track to track, with a lot of the driving four to the floor kick drums, the offbeat snares and hi-hats, as well as the very gummy bass lines. It may be a really obvious formula, but Disclosure are far from your average EDM DJs. I mean, I'd rather listen to this than like Avicii or Zed. However, though, I think on this new record over here, Disclosure leans a little too hard on their guest stars, sort of hoping that they would, I guess, kind of carry the record here when in fact they don't really. Because a lot of the biggest vocal features on this record are some of the most underwhelming, unfortunately, as Disclosure just sort of tries to fit one guest after another into these old school house music vocal lines, regardless of whether or not it actually fits the respective style of the singer. And some of the vocal performances here are just a little underwhelming, like Miguel's, who he just sounds absolutely anonymous on this track. I would not have guessed it was Miguel if you hadn't told me. Songs on this record like Jaded and Echoes, songs that I like quite a bit, that don't have a celeb vocal credit put on the track listing. Tracks like these have way bolder singing, in my opinion. But another example for me on this thing of trying to fit a round peg into a square hole is when Lorde is trying to take on this old school house sound. I feel like her breathy, kind of dramatic vocals don't really fit too well into this vocal style. The Weeknd certainly comes close with the opening track here, Nocturnal. The verses are a little middle of the road for me, but once the chorus pops in, it's just sparks with the multi-layered vocals and the Weeknd reaching into his upper range, Abel. Nocturnal! Sam Smith's multi-layered vocals on his track actually do get a little muddy though, which I don't care for too much, but the tune that he's on is good. But I think the first fire vocal appearance on this thing actually comes from jazz singer Gregory Porter. He sounds amazing on this track. Not only does he have a fantastic vocal presence, he's very bold, his voice is very husky, it's very expressive, he has a great melody to sing, but also he sounds like he has a very intimate familiarity with this kind of music, with this old school house music that Disclosure borrows from so obviously. Definitely more of an intimate relationship than some of the artists on this record do. Then I feel like Disclosure and their guests start making impressions on this album on me, but for the wrong reasons, kind of like on the track Willing and Able, which is not only a really lackluster and redundant tune, but Quab's vocal appearance on this track is really I just couldn't stand it, honestly. He's not really that articulate of a singer, and I found a lot of his I guess kind of pronunciations and cadences in his singing to be kind of sloppy and all over the place. And the track Supergo featured some baby-voiced singing, kind of like in the vein of Aluna George, but again, I just feel like the tone of this voice was really getting to me, and it was almost as if the song was teasing me when it went into this chorus singing, "You don't like it, you don't like it, you don't like it." No, I don't. I enjoy the closing track on this thing a lot, though. It shows Disclosure varying away from the house formula and doing a bit of, I guess, synthetic R&B and soul with a very just bouncy, very fat bass line, although I wish they kind of changed up the drum timbres a little bit because the very, I guess, jutting electronic kick drums I don't think complement this kind of music all that well. Still, I do like the song, though, and I think Disclosure did do a good job of kind of changing things up stylistically and made a very sensual closing track in the process. Overall, I thought this LP was okay. I mean, it's not as fantastic as Settle, I don't think, but it's not really the grave disappointment some people have painted this album to be. I think it has a lot of positive characteristics. It's just that a lot of them can also be found on Settle. I don't really feel like the duo has progressed or grown in any significant way on this new record over here, which I think was kind of necessary if the duo was going to continue on the streak set by the first album. It's just kind of a slightly more watered down, more commercial and star-studded version of Settle. I'm feeling a light to decent 6 on this thing. Transition. Have you given this record a listen? If you have, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano. Disclosure. Forever.